Have you ever found yourself replaying a moment that happened years ago and still feeling that same tightness in your chest? Sometimes the wound has already healed on the outside, but it still pulses inside. People talk about forgiveness as if it's a simple act. Just let it go and move on. But in practice, you find out it doesn't work that way. Maybe the reason you can't forgive is precisely because what they call forgiveness isn't what it really means. Today, we'll explore 5 truths about forgiveness that almost no one talks about. And once you understand them, you'll realize it's not about forgetting or justifying, but about freeing yourself from a weight you might not even know you're carrying. What few people mention is that forgiveness rarely happens instantly. It's more like healing a fracture. First, you need to acknowledge the severity of the pain. Then, you immobilize what's been broken so that time and care can do their work. At first, every movement hurts. Every thought drifts back to the scene. But over time, with the right tools, you notice the pain begins to fade. This understanding already changes the game because it frees you from the unrealistic expectation of resolving everything in a single emotional moment. Forgiveness is a living process, full of ups and downs, that only gains real strength when you understand your active role in it. Most of us grew up hearing that forgiveness is an act of kindness toward the other person. But that's only half the story. Forgiveness is, above all, a deep act of self-care. Imagine carrying a backpack full of stones. Each resentment is one of them. You might get used to the weight, but that doesn't mean it isn't wearing you down. And when we talk about forgiveness, we're not saying to ignore what happened or pretend it didn't hurt. We're talking about recognizing the pain, understanding its impact, and deciding not to let it control your present anymore. That's where the first truth will reveal lives. But before that, we need to understand why so many people confuse forgiveness with weakness. And there's another reason so many fail in this journey. They confuse forgiveness with emotional amnesia. They believe they'll have truly forgiven only when they feel nothing upon remembering. But that's not forgiveness. That's anesthesia, and it doesn't last. When the effect wears off, the pain comes back with force. True forgiveness doesn't erase memories. It changes the way they live inside you. It's like swapping a sharp blade for a harmless object. The memory is still there, but it no longer cuts. And understanding this difference is what opens the door to the first of the 5 truths we're about to explore. One of the biggest myths about forgiveness is believing it means erasing the memory of what happened, as if there were a reset button in the mind, and by pressing it, everything would disappear. But forgetting isn't just impossible. It can often be dangerous. Memory plays a protective role. It helps us recognize patterns, avoid situations, and stay away from people who might hurt us again. Think of memory as a lighthouse. It lights the way, not to keep you trapped in the past, but to guide your choices in the present. When someone says, "forgive and forget," they're unknowingly asking you to give up that inner compass. True forgiveness doesn't require erasing anything, but transforming how the memory works in your life. Some people even try to force themselves to forget, as proof they've moved on. That's like sweeping dust under the rug. It looks resolved, but it's still there, building up. Sooner or later, a gesture, a smell, or a word makes it all return, and the pain resurfaces. When you understand that you don't have to erase anything to move forward, you start freeing up mental energy to invest in what really matters. Forgiveness doesn't require amnesia. It requires reframing. The memory remains part of your story. It stops being a chapter you reread with pain. I remember a client who carried, for over 20 years, the resentment of a betrayal. She would say, "I can't forgive because I can't forget." What she didn't realize was that she was trying to force her mind to erase something that had real value as a lesson. During our conversations, it became clear that the problem wasn't the memory itself, but the emotional weight she attached to it. That's when I suggested she seek therapy, so she could deal with it in a healthier way. She did, and learned that instead of reliving the scene with anger and pain, she could start rebuilding the meaning of that memory. She started to see it as a turning point, the moment she learned to recognize signs of disrespect before they became deep wounds. That shift didn't make the memory disappear, but it stripped it of its power to hurt her daily. Neuroscience confirms that emotional memories aren't erased. At best, they can be updated with new interpretations. It's like a computer file. You can't simply delete it from your brain, but you can overwrite the emotional content it holds. By revisiting a memory with new meaning, you send a different signal to your nervous system, reducing the stress and anxiety reactions that were once automatic. This frees not only the mind, but also the body, which stops living in a constant state of alert. When this new understanding settles in, something changes deeply. You stop fighting the memory and start cooperating with it. It ceases to be an internal enemy and becomes a consultable file that helps you make better decisions. It's like having a scar. You don't need to hide it, because it tells a story of survival. But before we can transform memories this way, we need to break another common misconception that prevents many from freeing themselves: the idea that forgiving is the same as reconciling. Another common misconception is believing that forgiving someone automatically means restoring the relationship. In reality, forgiveness and reconciliation are two completely different processes. Forgiveness is internal. It happens in the quiet of your mind and in the private space of your heart. Reconciliation, on the other hand, requires the other person's presence, mutual agreement, and often the rebuilding of trust. You can forgive someone and still choose never to allow them back into your life. It's like locking the door to your home after it's been broken into. It's not about hatred, it's about protection. Many confuse reconciliation with a kind of proof that they've overcome the hurt. This perspective creates dangerous pressure, leading people to expose themselves again to relationships that haven't changed. Trying to restore something without genuine remorse on the other side risks opening the door to new wounds. Forgiveness is something you can do alone, without applause, without witnesses, and it's complete in itself. Reconciliation, however, requires reciprocity and concrete change. Think of the case of a friend who betrayed you deeply. Over time, you might work internally to release the weight of that resentment, but that doesn't mean the friendship should return. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. Not out of bitterness, but because the road on the other side no longer leads to a safe place. Psychologist Brené Brown says that trust is built in small, consistent acts, and once broken, can take years, or even be impossible, to restore. It's also important to remember that reconciliation is not the same as peace. Many stay in toxic relationships under the pretext of keeping harmony, when in reality, they're living in constant tension. Forgiveness can coexist with a lack of contact, and often, it's precisely that distance that allows true peace to settle in. Choosing not to re-establish a bond doesn't diminish the value of forgiveness. On the contrary, it shows it's been matured and sustained by healthy boundaries. The danger of confusing forgiveness with reconciliation is that we end up forcing meetings and conversations to prove we've truly moved on, when in reality, we may not be ready, or may not even want to be. This pressure can reopen wounds and generate more resentment. By separating these two ideas, you gain emotional freedom and set clear boundaries. And there's one boundary in particular, almost invisible, that most people ignore. And when crossed, it turns forgiveness into self-sabotage. Many people see forgiving as lowering your guard or demeaning yourself. This belief comes from a cultural confusion where strength is mistaken for emotional hardening. In reality, forgiveness requires a level of courage that few are willing to face. It's like walking into a dark room where you know painful memories live and still choosing to turn on the light to face them head on. There's nothing weak about that. In fact, it's one of the most powerful acts of emotional autonomy you can make. Forgiveness isn't about ignoring what happened, but about taking control of the impact it will have on your life. It's strength in its quietest, yet most transformative form. The courage to face your own pain and work to heal it demands far more discipline than keeping your heart hardened. This strength isn't displayed in grand gestures, but in daily, repeated decisions, not to let the past dictate your present. Think of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison unjustly, and upon his release, sought not revenge, but reconciliation with his country. He often said that holding on to resentment was like drinking poison and expecting the enemy to die. Forgiveness in this context was a political act, but above all, an act of self-preservation. Holding on to bitterness would have destroyed his health and mind. Of course, not all of us go through something of that magnitude, but the principle is the same. Forgiveness is choosing not to intoxicate yourself with feelings that corrode from the inside out. Interestingly, when you develop this strength, you begin to realize that forgiveness is not a gift you give to someone else, but a gift you give yourself. It's like opening the windows of a house that's been shut for years. Fresh air flows in, light floods the space, and suddenly, everything feels bigger. This sensation of lightness isn't fragility. It's power. Quiet power, but capable of completely transforming the way you live and relate. But here's a detail almost no one talks about. There's a thin line between forgiving from strength and forgiving from fear. Fear of losing a relationship. Fear of being seen as difficult. Fear of facing loneliness. When forgiveness comes from fear, it stops being liberating and becomes a form of submission. And it's precisely this invisible limit we need to talk about before we reach the last truth of this journey. There's a crucial point many ignore. Forgiving doesn't mean giving someone a free pass to repeat the same mistake. True forgiveness walks hand in hand with setting boundaries. It's like locking your door after it's been broken into. You may no longer feel anger toward the intruder, but that doesn't mean you'll leave it unlocked for them to return. Some mistake this protection for resentment, when in reality, it's self-respect. Keeping clear boundaries after forgiving is an act of self-care. Without them, we leave space to repeat the same cycles of pain. Forgiveness should never be used as an excuse to tolerate abusive or disrespectful behavior. This confusion is common because many have been taught to mistake patience for passivity, but they're entirely different. Patience gives time for change to occur. Passivity allows the wound to reopen indefinitely. A real-life example. I knew a woman who forgave her brother countless times for unpaid loans, believing she was keeping the family together. The problem was that, without realizing it, she was putting herself in a position of repeated vulnerability. When she finally understood she could forgive, and still say no to new requests, she felt lighter and safer. This type of decision doesn't lessen the value of forgiveness. On the contrary, it strengthens it. Forgiveness without self-care turns into permissiveness, and permissiveness doesn't heal. It only hides the wound until something tears it open again. Learning to say enough is just as important as learning to forgive. When you maintain healthy boundaries, you send yourself the message that you deserve respect from others and from yourself. And this posture also teaches those around you the minimum standard of treatment you accept. Setting boundaries after forgiving isn't a sign of lingering bitterness, but of wisdom. It's understanding that you can't control someone else's actions, but you can control the access they have to your life. This stance often unsettles those used to overstepping your limits. But in the end, it's this balance that makes forgiveness truly liberating. And this brings us to the final truth, one that's not about the other person, but about the silent impact forgiveness has on your own future. Looking at these 5 truths, that forgiveness is not forgetting, not reconciliation, not weakness, not allowing new wounds, and most importantly, is an act of personal liberation, we realize forgiveness is far more a tool for self-transformation than a gesture for someone else. It's like releasing an anchor that's kept you stuck in turbulent waters. Suddenly, you have the space to sail toward new horizons. By understanding this, you not only free yourself from the weight of the past, but also open space for healthier relationships, more conscious decisions, and a lighter life. Forgiveness isn't about winning or losing. It's about reclaiming control over your own story. It's choosing not to carry a burden that no longer serves you. But this choice requires self-awareness. When you understand your own temperament, your emotional triggers, and how you react to situations, forgiveness stops being a purely emotional effort and becomes a strategic decision for your personal growth. This is where forgiveness connects to something even deeper. Clarity about who you are and how you work. And this clarity has a powerful effect. It not only accelerates your healing process, but also prevents you from repeating behavioral patterns that lead to new hurts. When you understand your temperament, it becomes easier to spot situations and relationships that aren't worth the emotional cost. It's like learning to read road signs on the highway of your life, and thus, avoiding routes that don't take you where you want to go. If this video opened space for important reflections, this other one might be the key for you to move even further. There, we'll explore how discovering your temperament can accelerate your personal growth and unlock areas of your life that feel stuck today. Click to watch now and continue this journey of self-discovery and transformation, because understanding yourself is the final step to turning forgiveness into permanent freedom. Take a moment to share this with someone who also needs to hear this message. And of course, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and keep joining us on this journey of self-discovery and growth. And remember,